Now we have been discussing about the trunking part, right? So there are two ways to configure trunking. One is the manual and second is the automatic. Okay. So for automatic manual trunking is what? This one. What you perform manual trunk. Just go and give the command switchboard mode trunk. That is the manual trunk. What is automatic trunking? So for automatic trunking, your Cisco has created a protocol. That protocol is known as DTP, Dynamic Trunking Protocol. Okay. So this DTP protocol works only in Cisco switches. Okay, and generally we avoid using this protocol. Okay, now see. Your DTP stands for Dynamic Trunking Protocol. This is going to do nothing but perform the trunking once. Okay, is a trunking protocol that is developed and proprietary to Cisco, which is used to automatically negotiate trunk link between Cisco switches. So if you have two switches, see, as of now, when I was having two switches and I created these two switches, on both the switches of interface F0/2, I went and gave the command switchboard mode trunk. But when we are talking about DTP, in case of DTP, if you give a special command on this particular interface will automatically become trunk. This is dynamic trunking, automatic trunking. That these switches will talk to each other and they will perform the trunking. Okay. So trunk negotiations are managed by DTP only if the ports are directly connected to each other. Means if you perform dynamic trunking on this interface, only this interface will become trunk. Next interface will not become trunk. Only directly connected interfaces will become the trunk. Okay. Ethernet trunk interface support various trunking modes. Okay, there are various modes. Okay, what are the modes? First one is access. Correct. So means you can say this is static access. Second one, you can say static trunk or permanent trunk. Then third one, you can say in case of DTP, we have dynamic auto. And in case of DTP, we have one more mode, dynamic desirable. Okay, these are the modes. Static access mode, permanent access mode, static trunk mode, permanent trunk mode. Okay, means in these cases, they do not care about anything. Okay, the dynamic trunking will happen here due to these two modes. Okay. All right. So if you see here, as of now, before going to the dynamic trunking, if I show you the interface, what is the administrative mode by default? Dynamic auto means all the switches are by default in the dynamic auto mode. Okay. Now see. So what are the various trunking modes? It is saying those interfaces can be configured as a trunk. Can be configured as a trunk. How? Switchboard mode, trunk. Known trunk, switchboard mode, access. Okay, this is the trunk. This is the known trunk. Means your access port is also known as known. Or to initiate negotiating trunking to a neighbor interface. Means asking neighboring interface to become a trunk. That is your desirable. Desirable means have a desire to become a trunk. Okay. So this dynamic desirable interface, this will ask the neighboring interface to become a trunk. Or is waiting to receive trunking negotiation message from another directly connected interface. So who is waiting? The auto. This is waiting. And this is initiating trunking request. Okay, now this is kind of scenario. See, these two we have discussed, static access and static trunk. What is dynamic auto? So by default, all the ports are dynamic auto. So this is a kind of situation where we have two persons. Okay. Now, let's say this is person A and this is person B. Person A is waiting for the person B to start the communication. Okay, he's waiting like, okay, if the person B will talk to me, I will talk, otherwise I will not talk. And same thing, person B is also thinking. If person A will talk, I'll talk, otherwise I will not talk. Will they ever talk? No, they will not talk. Why? Because they both are waiting for each other. Similar thing is with the switches. By default, they are in auto mode. Also in auto mode. Correct. So if they will keep on waiting for each other, let's say this switch 1 interface will wait for switch 2 and switch 2 interface will wait for switch 1. Will they ever form trunking? No. That's why by default you remain in the access mode. But what will happen if you change one of the port to desirable? If you change one of the port to desirable, what will happen? This will make the request to become a trunk, and this is already waiting for the request. So this is how the dynamic trunking will happen. That one will make a request and one is waiting, trunking. What if I make both of them desirable? This is making a request, this will also make the request. So both are agreed. Again, trunking will happen. Correct. But if you form a static access here, now when static access is there, what will happen? Doesn't care anything. Do not care about the trunking. It will remain in the access port only. And if this will remain in the access port only, he will not get reply that, okay, let's become trunk. So this will also remain in the access mode. Is that clear? Okay. Now, most Cisco switches nowadays uses which protocol? .1 queue as their trunking type of choice because of less overhead compared to the ISR protocol. Okay, even Cisco uses what? .1 queue. Now the switch port modes. So first command is switch port mode access. An access port does not act as a trunk interface and allow only one VLAN through that port. Correct? An interface in the access mode become a non-trunk interface, will never become a trunk, regardless of whether neighboring interface is a trunk interface or not. Okay, so means if you have two switches and if you go to this switch and give the command switch port mode access, this will remain in access mode. Now doesn't matter this side it is trunk, auto or desirable, doesn't matter anything, will never become a trunk. And if this will never become a trunk, then no dynamic trunking will happen here. Clear? Then switch port mode trunk. So if you give switch port mode trunk command here, then this is the permanent trunking mode. So it will become a trunk. It doesn't matter what is the neighboring interface status.
Before that, you go with on-site switch port access. Another side, if it is trunk, then what will be the result? Like
access. Depends. See what I'm saying here. Let's say by default, this is access, for example. See, but access and trunk is the behavior. Right now, we are talking about modes. Okay. We have two behaviors. One is the access and one is the trunk. Correct. So what is the usual behavior now? See that this will remain in access. This will remain in access. But according to DTP, here mode is what? Dynamic auto. So let me directly say auto and auto. Correct. Now, if you give the command switch port mode access, this will become permanent access, static access. Okay. Now it will not form trunking, whether this side is auto, desirable, doesn't matter anything. If you give the command switch port mode trunk, then it will not be in the access mode anymore. It will be in the trunk mode. Okay. Now this is the permanent trunking mode. Okay. Now, even if this side is access, doesn't matter. Okay. Even if you give this side switch port mode access command also, doesn't matter. It will become the trunk. So the trunk mode enables the interface to be set in permanent trunking mode. and establishes negotiation. Means once this you give this command switch port mode trunk, it will send the request also that let's become a trunk. Okay, so this side, if it is auto is waiting for the request, they will become a trunk. But if you have given the command switch port mode access, will not become a trunk, but still this will again become a trunk one. Why? Because this is the permanent trunking. So just consider it like this, that we have two things. One is the static and one is the dynamic. If you give static access, switch port mode access will become access, doesn't matter what is the neighboring interface. If you give trunk, switch port mode trunk, it will become trunk, doesn't matter what is the neighboring interface. In case of dynamic, automatic trunking will take place. Okay, this is clear. Okay, so it is going to ask for the neighboring interface to become a trunk link through the switch interface, though the switch interface becomes a trunk even if the neighboring interface is not. So even if the neighboring interface is not trunk, still this interface will become trunk, because this is the permanent mode, static modes. These two modes, they will take their behavior even if the neighboring interface is taking some other behavior. If you are giving access, they will become access. If you are giving trunk, they will become. It doesn't matter what is the status of neighboring interface. Okay.
Sir, if we switch one interface in access mode and switch to interface in trunk mode, if we want traffic from switch one goes to the switch two, it will communicate.
Depends which VLAN.
With VLAN. So if we switch one having one VLAN, it will.
See, let's take your scenario. These are connected. Let's say two PCs are connected. Sorry. This is access you're saying. This is trunk. Correct. Access means which VLAN?
VLAN
one. Okay, VLAN 1. Then, and this PC, which VLAN?
VLAN 10.
10. Okay. Obviously, the traffic will not pass. Why? This is belonging to VLAN 1. Okay. Any other?
Change the switch interface to VLAN 10.
This one? Okay, VLAN 10.
And
this will pass.
Pass.
Okay, with what VLAN here?
If there is another VLAN, it will not pass.
Yes. Depends which VLAN is here.
Suppose in switch 2 there is a VLAN 10 also and VLAN 20 also.
No, this PC, let's say this is IP 10.1, this is IP 10.2. You want to communicate to this PC, right? This is PC1, this is PC2. Now, PC2 belongs to which VLAN? No, they will communicate. Why? Because this is access port, will forward the traffic. This is trunk port, will allow the traffic.
The same VLAN they will communicate, but in switch 1, there is one another VLAN, suppose VLAN 20.
Okay. So T20 traffic will not pass because this is in the VLAN 10 only.
If we switch to have VLAN 20 also.
Still doesn't matter. Still doesn't matter. This port is in still VLAN 10 only. So this will forward traffic for VLAN 10 only. Okay. Static port, I mean access port, can forward the traffic of a single VLAN only. Is that clear? Okay. Then next, the dynamic auto mode. So dynamic auto means waiting for the negotiation. So this DTP mode takes the interface passively wait to receive a negotiation message to make itself a trunk. It will keep on waiting, at which point the switch will respond and negotiate whether to use trunking. So if a request is coming, it will respond that, okay, let's become a trunk, and the trunking will happen. The switch interface becomes a trunk if the neighboring interface is set to trunk or dynamic desirable, because the trunk and dynamic desirable mode only will initiate the trunking. Other modes will not initiate the trunking. Is that clear? Then dynamic desirable, it will initiate the trunking request, right? So this DTP mode lets the port to initiate trunking with another port by sending a negotiation message to dynamically choose whether to start using trunking. Means it will send the request that, okay, let's become a trunk. Okay, so the neighboring interface will decide whether to become a trunk or not. The interface become a trunk mode if the neighboring interface is set to trunk, because both will send the request. If it is dynamic desirable mode, both again sending the request, and dynamic auto mode means neighboring interface is waiting for the request. So in this case, they will become a trunk. But if the neighbor is static access, will not become a trunk. Okay. And if you want to disable DTP, you have to give the command switch port, no negotiate. This is clear. Okay. Now this is the table that is going to give, like, in what case there will be trunking, in what case there will be no trunking. Okay. Now, if you want, you can read it like, okay, this side consider switch 1 ports. This side consider switch 2 ports. Okay. Let's say this side we have switch 1, switch 2. Okay. So if switch 1 is dynamic desirable, switch 2 is desirable, both will initiate the request. There will be trunking. If switch 1 is auto, 2 is desirable, 1 is waiting, 2 is sending the request, trunking. Okay. 1 is trunk and second is desirable, means sending the request, there will be trunking. If access mode, no trunking, there will be no trunking. Okay. So let me tell you shortcut for this. Remember, if any one is access, if anyone is access, static access, permanent access, there will be no trunking. Okay. Other than this, if both are auto, both are in dynamic auto mode, in this case also no trunking. And rest of all the scenarios, there will be trunking. So if either of switch 1 or switch 2, if either of them is a static access, permanent access, means if you have given either here or here, if you have given the command switch port mode access, okay, there will be no trunking. Or else if the both are in auto mode, in that case also no trunking, because both will be waiting for you. Rest of all the scenarios, whether this is auto desirable, auto trunk, auto anything, rest of all the scenarios, there will be trunking. Okay. See here.
The previous case that you came for example, you mentioned like in one port access, another port you made that trunk.
Yes.
In that case, only VLAN 10 traffic will
Only VLAN 10 traffic. No, will not. VLAN 20 will not. Because VLAN 10.
But it is okay to configure it as trunk, not a problem.
Yes, up to you. How you configure that is up to you. Obviously, you will be getting some errors. Okay. See.
I thought like both would be only access.
No. Because permanent trunk we are creating that side, right? One side we are creating permanent trunk, one side permanent access. So they will take their behaviors. This is the permanent behavior. They will take their behaviors, but the traffic will pass only for VLAN 10. Okay. This is clear. That if both are auto, no trunking. If any one is access, if any one is access, then no trunking. Rest of all the cases, there is trunking. Okay.